In literature, spiritual literature, scriptural literature, you will continue to find references to you, he, she, it. Such references as might indicate that you must change your way of life, or you must do something to earn the grace of God, or that he or she must change. I'm going to ask you, even when you read those things, to remember what I'm saying to you now. The responsibility is not on your shoulder. And it is not on his shoulder or her shoulder. And so I will ask you, as a keynote of this classwork, refrain from all indulgence of criticism or judgment of the he's, she's, and it's of the world, and more particularly the judgment, criticism, and condemnation and belittling of oneself and one's own understanding, because the government is not on our shoulders to improve ourselves. It is on the shoulders of the Christ. Rest more in the realization of Christ as being that which is leading us, guiding us, and directing us. Let us never believe that the saints and sages and seers of the world, by some great act of their own will, became saints and sages and seers, because it isn't true. It isn't true. We have seen enough even in this age of the beloved spiritual lights of this age, teachers, leaders, practitioners, to know that not one of them, by their own will or their own grace, ever gave up their personal sense of life to become spiritual teachers or leaders, but rather that the grace of God pulled them out of the business world or housekeeping and made them fishers of men. The Master walked the hillside and selected his disciples and said, "Come, I will make you fishers of men." And perhaps you think that they were of high understanding because they obeyed. No, they had no power not to obey. They had no more power to resist the Master than you and I have right now. When the Master says, "Come, come, I will make you fishers of men," you will obey. You have already obeyed in being here. You have already obeyed in making the sacrifice of time, money, effort, study, meditation to be here. You've already shown that you have no capacity to resist the activity of Christ in your consciousness, even if you had the will or the desire, which of course you haven't got. But if you had, and if you lack the understanding, and if you lack the wisdom, and if you lack the courage, and if you lack the willpower, it still would make no difference, because there is that in you which is greater than your human sense of rebellion or desire for ease in matter. Yes, the human being has a normal, natural desire to be at ease. But you see, the human being doesn't come out 18 times in 3 weeks to hear about God. Oh, no, the human being has weddings to attend and funerals and jackasses to raise out of the road. The human being has so many things to occupy them, tickets for theaters and all the rest of it, that it doesn't respond to the activity of the Christ. But once the touch has reached an individual, and they are called, rest assured they follow. And from then on, do the disciples have any responsibility for their careers? No. The Master sends them out. And he sends them out one time without purse and without script, and they go that way, and they survive it. He sends them out another time with purse and with script. They go, and they survive it. He takes some of them to the mountaintop. He takes them. Do they go? No, he takes them. Have they the power to resist? No. Nor have you, nor have I. This is a life by grace. Everything that transpires in your life today, and everything that transpires from now on unto eternity, will be an act of grace. Oh, I know there are a few of you, maybe I'm one of them too, who will resist that for a little while. Here and there we'll turn aside to indulge some personal sense, some personal will, some personal ambition, but we will be hauled up because it isn't given to us to resist the Christ. It isn't given to us to refute or to refuse when the call comes. Oh, no. No, we may be guilty of denying the Master even 3 times. We may be guilty of betrayal. We may be guilty of falling asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane. What difference does it make? Don't be disturbed by it. Don't be alarmed by it. Don't condemn yourself for your shortcomings. Just realize that as part of the illusion that may have been inevitable, but because of divine grace, ultimate salvation was even more inevitable. It is much more inevitable that Peter heal a man at the temple gate beautiful than that he deny the Christ. The denying of the Christ was one of those little incidences of a human falling temporarily by the wayside for popularity of the masses or fear of punishment. Or we may do the same thing. We may. There are people in this work who temporarily are permitting some church affiliation to really interfere with their full-hearted devotion to the following of the Christ, but, oh, please be merciful, kind, and just to them. That's just a little twinge of humanhood. That isn't any different than Peter's denial. That isn't any different than the disciples falling asleep in the garden. There's no real harm comes out of it. It's a temporary thing. The inevitability is that through all of those experiences, the disciples would awaken and have a Pentecostal experience in which the Holy Ghost would descend upon them, and they would hear in their own language the language of the Spirit, and from then on go about their Father's business. And even then, they made the mistake of adopting communism. They thought they could pool all their money together and live contentedly by dividing it up, and they had a most horrible experience, leading to what? To the inevitable conclusion that everybody has to live by his own state of consciousness. Everyone has to demonstrate his great income or lesser income. Everyone has to demonstrate the harmonies and comforts of life, not by might, nor by power, nor by dividing things up in this world, nor living off of each other, but by the degree of his own demonstrated Christ. Just as no one in this room can attain my degree of illumination by any act of sharing that I may wish to do, each one must attain it for himself, and I cannot demonstrate a degree of illumination of those who have gone beyond me except in proportion to my own state of illumination. And so it is with supply. Never think that we can divide up what we've got and each share with each other, because that is living off of effects, and it puts us right back into the material sense of existence again, the three-dimensional world. In the fourth-dimensional world, we live by grace, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit. You see that? Each one is responsible for his own integrity. Each one is responsible for his own unfoldment. But if you judge from the world of appearances, while we are on this 40-mile journey through the wilderness, or the 3-year ministry with the Master, you may well find some of us slipping backward quite a long distance too. You may be well surprised and shocked at some of the things we do, but don't get too horrified. Don't do it. That's just a little human weakness, and the Christ is going to dissolve it just as sure as fate, because the activity of the Christ is the dissolution of our humanhood, of our weaknesses, of our illusions. Patience, patience. We have an eternity in which to work it out. Patience. Patience with each other, but again, and I'm saying this particularly to this class in which there is a great sense of feeling of inadequacy, forgive yourselves and be patient with yourselves, and as often as you fall down, pick yourself up again, because you have no choice. Inevitably, the voice will sound in your ear, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And you'll know then that it is I calling. You will know right then that it isn't your will, and therefore you cannot have success or failure. Will you remember this? You cannot have success or failure. Why? Because I have called you and made you fishers of men, and it will be my success working in you and through you for my purpose, and you will be the instrument. In moments of temporary failure or seeming failure, please remember that too is part of the plan, and probably part of the plan to teach you that you can't fail and you can't be successful, because the I that called you is the only success. In the deeply religious literature of the world, you find statements like dying daily, or the need to give up one's personal self, or the need to lose one's personal life in order that we may attain the divine life, the spiritual life. All of these statements of giving up the self, destroying the self, overcoming the self, lead the average person to believe that there is some effort that takes on the nature of suppression or repression, and they believe that that is an overcoming of the self or subjugating of the self, or the dying daily. I refer, of course, to practices like giving up meat, or giving up smoking, or giving up pleasures, or giving up dancing, or other like things that usually are thought of in the way of interfering with spiritual progress. Now, from this standpoint, where we have this lack of personal responsibility, there is no overcoming or destroying of the self that involves any such thing as suppression or repression. The self must be overcome, that is true. Dying daily must be achieved in order that we may be reborn of the Spirit. But suppression and repression, these are not the way. The way of spiritual achievement lies in the lessening of our use of the word I. As we overcome the use of the word I, even in the sense of I desire to be better, drop as much as possible that sense, that use of the word I, and realize instead the Christ. the Christ is really the self. The Christ is really that which lives our life. And rather than indulge these human suppressions and human repressions, let life live itself normally, and whatever there is of an erroneous nature, material nature, sensual or mortal nature, will of itself disappear as you give up the use of the word I and think more in terms of the Christ. That was illustrated this afternoon in the idea of remembering back to our 15th chapter of John and the relationship of the branches, the vine, and the husbandman, the father. If we think of ourselves as branches and then start to say, I need more supply, or I would like to give forth more fruit, I would like to be more fruitful, I would like to be more loving, I would like to be more just, you standing off there looking at the tree would have just a jolly good laugh, as if a branch by itself could be anything or do anything or accomplish anything. But in proportion as that branch would look unto its vine, in the realization that even the vine can't do it, it's the husbandman, the father, acting, flowing through the vine to the branches, then you see how the use of the word I would be given up. Not I wish to be better, not I would like to be more spiritual, not I would like to do healing works, not I would like to benefit the world, but let's drop that I and look down there into the vine and into the husbandman and say, Christ is the world's salvation. Christ is the light of the world. The vine is the avenue through which the branch is fed. And so again you'd see that the government is not on my shoulder, but his that sent me. Again, the branch, we sometimes develop a sense of responsibility to friends, to family, sometimes fears as to what will happen to them without us, without our efforts, without our goodwill. And then there's a time to look ourselves right in the face and say, one branch needing another branch? No. Every branch turns unto the Christ, the vine, which in turn draws from the Father, the husbandman. And so we would be enabled to drop the responsibility for our friends and family, turn them loose. I don't mean neglect them. I know you don't know that I don't mean that. Not neglect them, but turn them loose and let the responsibility be upon the vine and the father, the husbandman, and drop that word I again. And in the same wise, this afternoon we brought forth that we are called upon often to give more than our share to friends, family, relatives, both in money, services, energies, sacrifices. So that is just another opportunity to drop that word I and realize, am I doing it? Or is all of this being produced from the Father through the vine? And so again, it isn't I. In the same wise, we may come to the place where we recognize ourselves to be the vine. We recognize that the world is the branches, but that now, through a higher understanding, we are drawing upon the Father, the divine wisdom, in order to aid the world, the branches. But there, too, may come this false sense of responsibility. Do I have enough understanding to do it? Do I have enough to feed multitudes with or heal multitudes? But there's that word I again. And so the vine, the Christ, dare not say, I can give or I can withhold, or have I enough wisdom or understanding or power, but even the vine must turn and say, the Father doeth the work. Not even the vine. The Father doeth the work. And again, you see, that sense of I-ness is given up. And so in every walk of life, whether we are selling a bill of goods, marketing, housekeeping, driving a car, whatever we're doing, in proportion as we give up the use of the word I say in proportion as we do. We do not quite achieve the fullness of that for a long time to come, but in proportion as we get up and realize that really and truly it is the Christ that functions us, the Christ that functions through us unto the world, in that degree then are we giving up the self. In that degree are we dying daily to the sense of personal powers, personal privileges, personal rights, personal healing powers, personal benevolence. And we're realizing ourselves as activities of the Christ. And in proportion as we do not run dry of food. In fact, we have 12 baskets full left over. We do not fail in healing power. We heal the multitudes of those ready and receptive and responsive to the Word. And not by virtue of ourselves, but by divine grace. We have been called, that which called us, that it is that maintains us and sustains us. Did you not notice in the healings by the disciples that it was always in the name of the Master, in the name of Jesus? All that that means is a recognition that they by their own power had not accomplished this. They were dying to their personal sense of spirituality and realizing that spirituality was of the Christ, not of man. Fruitage was not of the branch, it was of the vine and the husbandman. Do you follow that? And that drops the sense of personal responsibility and makes you an outlet, a complete outlet to the activity of the Christ and puts the responsibility on its shoulder. Now, this new dimension, Christ, is of course a dimension in which all of these earthly powers are proved to be no power by the none power, Christ, by that which is neither might nor power, but which is the all power of the Spirit. And so, it is really and truly a relaxing of might, a relaxing of power, a relaxing of personal sense with the realization that this invisible and to sense intangible is really the only presence and power that is a presence and a power in our world. That, you see, is the overcoming of the world. It is the overcoming of personal sense. It is the overcoming of vanity. It is the overcoming of the feeling of personal powers exemplified by the Master in his statement, "Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven." And so, only, not by suppression, not by repression, but by the use of the word or term, the Christ, rather than I, me, mine. Not only the I announcing its greatness, but even the I announcing its weakness or inability is just as much a personal sense of I as claiming credit for something. Claim no credit, but claim no failure. I have called you, and I, the nature of that which called you, will fulfill you. And you can see that as the disciples went about on their missions, they were not depending on themselves. They were depending on He who had called them. They called it in His name, or in the name of Jesus. And you know that what they really meant was that the power that called us into this missionary work is the power that performs it. Whatever it is that called us out of the business world or out of the home into the healing work, that it is that accomplishes the healing. By His name, by the nature of the Christ, our healings helpings, harmonies achieved. And all of that involves giving up the use of the word I. And the realization that the one I is he that called me. Now we are in the same position, having acknowledged that we were called to this class, that we did not come by virtue of a personal decision, but that we were called, and that which called us, the name, the nature of the Christ within, that it is that is interpreting the word of truth within us, enabling us to understand it, receive it, and respond to it. And so, there is no responsibility upon your shoulder for understanding anything that has taken place or been said. Nor is there any responsibility upon your shoulder for demonstrating it. And as you drop the use of the word I and realize, why, yes, he that called me is the power, it that called me. The Christ, the presence of God, the Spirit of God in man, that called me is the power, the illumination, the guidance, the direction, the maintenance, the sustenance, the support, the all in all. In this realization of this light, this illumined sense, this illumined consciousness within us, you can see how patient you can be with your faults or weaknesses or shortcomings, and let this light dissolve them, remove them, and reveal more and more of its glory. Sometimes this will not come too rapidly, for fear that when it does, we may be overcome by the sense that it was our wisdom that did it, and our understanding, and our spirituality, and that would be more fatal to us than a delay of a year or 2 or 3, so that it may come through and not startle us into some great belief in our own integrity, our own spirituality. That is why very often this is a slow process, this spiritual incoming. It is that we may not be shocked into too great a witness of miracles, and then believe that by our might and our power we have achieved it. And to the initiate, to the beginner on the path, to the beginning practitioner, that is the greatest temptation in the world. To witness great healings, to witness great sense of supply from him, and yet to be able to refrain from personal glory in the achievement is almost as difficult as the experience of the disciples when they came home bragging about their power over the devils. Oh, but they had no power over the devils. All that they were entitled to was gratitude that they had been called and that the power was working through them. Not that they had power, the power was working through them. But it could only work through them in proportion to their humility. And the true sense of humility is not any detraction of oneself or depreciation of oneself. It is a realization of one's greatness in having been called to be a servant of that master, of that power. Everyone who is called is not a master, but a servant. And to think of oneself as a master is to lose one's place in the spiritual path. Because there are no masters in spiritual truth. There are only servants of the power. That's all. Servants of the power. And anyone who believes themselves otherwise forfeit whatever of light they have achieved. I of my own self can do nothing was voiced by the one we call Master. He did not call himself Master. However, Master is as much of a title as practitioner or teacher is. And in that sense, if the world bestows it, there is no harm. The harm is when an individual claims to be master. Since that is, that is the only danger point that is really in spiritual progress. And that is a danger that the Christ itself prevents, in most cases, by making our pathway straight and narrow. If there be few that achieve it, it is for this reason, that only the few can witness the great miracles of the Spirit and still remember that it is the activity of the Spirit, not of man. And in the same wise, it takes a great soul to witness temporary defeat, temporary failure, and not have a sense of the personal I as having failed. It's difficult. But it is in those moments of temporary failure, temporary setbacks, that again the disciple must remember it isn't a question of I to succeed or I to fail. The Christ that operates and activates me, it never fails. That is the standpoint of our entire work. The Christ, the Spirit of God, is the motive power in spiritual living and being, and it never fails. And when you witness failure, again remember, you are viewing life from the three-dimensional standpoint, from the world of appearance. Drop that, and soon you will see the success coming again. But it is the success of He that called me. It is the success of the nature of the Christ. It is the nature of the Christ to be successful, and we to be the instruments of that success. Let us rest a moment. Let us begin tonight, from this very moment on, to accept ourselves as the vine. And from rising early in the morning to resting late at night, let us remember that the vine is the instrument through which the Father is pouring its glory into the branches. Let us look out into this world, whether of people, circumstances, conditions, governments. Let us take it as human consciousness and see all of human consciousness as the branches, and realize that having been called as disciples, as being of the new dimension Christ, that we now function as an instrument of the infinite invisible, and that whatever our activity may be, in the home, in the business, whatever our activity may be, we are functioning as the vine. And we are looking to the Father within, the husbandman, for continuous support, spirit, direction, love, life, abundance, not for ourselves. Now we are dropping the self. No longer will we seek good for ourselves. We will seek good of the Father, the husbandman, only that it may flow to the branches, to human consciousness, and feed it, and heal it, sustain it, by destroying the illusory sense of existence. Take that humblest of all attitudes, that of being the vine. So many people, think of the Christ as something great that they would like to attain because of its greatness, not realizing that the more of it they attain, the less they become. Never think for a moment that while Jesus walked on earth, that he was looked upon as a great man or a savior. He was looked upon as a servant of the Most High God. He was looked upon as a minister, a rabbi. He was looked upon as a teacher of men. He was not looked upon and glorified. No. The glorification came in the recollection of his deeds of humility. Not in his greatness. He wasn't great. He was a servant. His only greatness was in his humility, in his realization of the fact that he was a vine and that the Father within was the essence of all that flowed through the vine to the branches. That was why he washed the feet of the disciples, unless he could show them that he was but a servant. He could not show them that he was an instrument for God. Otherwise, he would have given the impression that he of himself was some great thing, and therefore when he was gone, that greatness would be gone. But he demonstrated so clearly that no matter what happened to him, since he was only a servant, the greatness would remain to flow into the hearts and souls and minds and consciousness of men in proportion to their humility. Peter and John raised a man at the temple gate beautiful. And the Hebrews marveled. Why marvel ye men of Israel? As if we of our own selves had done this thing? No, it was the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob that has done this thing. The same Spirit that raised up Jesus Christ from the dead has also done this. Wasn't that clear that they recognized themselves to be instruments of the divine? And so it is. Our friend Lao Tse tells us that the only way to greatness is to make oneself nothing. And now you can see that in proportion as a person would really understand Christ to be the allness of them, in that degree would great works come forth, and then men would give credit and glory to that servant, to that instrument. But the individual himself could only receive that credit and glory in proportion to the humility that would enable him to know that he was but the instrument for the hand of the divine. Not so with us. Never believe for a moment that when you begin to perceive yourself to be the Son of God, the very Christ of God, that you are in some wise glorifying yourself. You are being humble and announcing your nothingness. And in proportion as you understand your nothingness, only in that degree could you be the servant of the Most High, the instrument for the flow of God to man. And perhaps in that humility and nothingness would be your greatness. Oh, there are people who believe that we are almost insulting God to call ourselves the Son of God or the Christ. Well, of course, we don't call ourselves any such thing in public, but within our own being we know that the Christ is really our true being and our real nature, and that as such we are the Son of God. But instead of exalting ourselves high above our fellow man, we are submitting ourselves as servants unto our fellow man. Only in the degree that we realize this can the term Son of God or the Christ be a true name in your forehead. Only do you enter the new dimension Christ when you enter it in the humility that knows I can of my own self do nothing. I am but an instrument through which infinite good is flowing into human consciousness, so that I can feed the multitudes and heal the multitudes, but by no virtue of my own, by virtue of the fact that God is the light of the world, that the husbandman is forever manifesting itself through those individuals who know their nothingness. Whatever our particular work in life must be, let us undertake it in the sense, in the realization that we are instruments for the activity and flow of the divine, and let it operate. But be sure when it does that we don't assume personal credit and personal responsibility, and that we do not go into a personal decline when we go through those periods of seeming barrenness. They may not be periods of barrenness, they may be periods of rest, a further intake. The 40 days that the Master spent away doing no healing work, doing no mighty work. No. When he came down from the mountaintop, he did his mighty works, and probably we will require days and weeks and months of refreshment in which we too will have the feeling of doing nothing and accomplishing nothing while the world is waiting to be healed. Let it wait. The poor you shall have always with you. Don't be in a hurry to save them. There'll be another generation of the poor and miserable right after it. Until the complete illumination. Remember this. The only power we have to help anyone is in proportion to our being fulfilled of the Christ. And so then be not in a hurry to go out until the oil is well stacked up in our lanterns. Wait, be patient. Even though the world is clamoring for healing, let it clamor until we are fulfilled. And then go out in the glory of the Father, in the realization of the Christ, and let it flow. But as soon as we feel the need for further refreshment, let us not feel that the world won't get along without us, can't get along without us, but rather remember we have nothing to offer the world of ourselves. And that only in proportion as we become refilled, in proportion as we become fulfilled, can we go forth into the world and spread the light, be the Christ, show forth the glory of healings and harmonies. No one of himself can do anything. No one of himself should feel that he's important to the world. No one of himself should feel a call to the world. Let the Christ be the call. And then when it comes, be sure to retire often enough from the world to be refilled, to get a greater sense, a greater awareness of the activity of the Christ. Do we have a choice now? Is the opportunity present with us for self-profit, self-glorification, or a personal or selfish use of this understanding? No. There is no such thing. You can see now that there is no choice, and that we have no choice, and that having been called to be fishers of men, we will have to do it in the new way of the ministry, the new way of discipleship. The minister of today and tomorrow, the disciple of today and tomorrow, will wear only a businessman's suit or a housewife's dress. There will be nothing about the minister or the disciple to set him apart from other men and other women. There will be no titles. There will be no fancy dress. For the simple reason that the man or the woman cannot be glorified or set apart, nor can they function for the benefit of the world except as one of the world. Unless the world can say, oh, you are a man or a woman even as I, but you can live this life, therefore there is hope for me. Only in that degree can the activity of the Christ be of benefit to the world today. There was a time when it was necessary to dress up the Christ in fancy robes to attract the unthinking, but it spoiled its own purpose for the simple reason that it set the world to believing, ah yes, you could do those things, but not I. Just look at that robe. Just look at that birth. Just look at your background. I can't achieve it. And for that reason, that type of ministry will not work today. It will not be successful today. Today, it must be the clerk behind the counter who is the minister and the disciple and shows forth discipleship to the other clerks by very reason of their being also a clerk. The only way in which the activity of the Christ can reach human consciousness today is almost, you may say, as an underground work, as a secret work, as the light shines in the activity and experience of the individual who is our neighbor, who is the clerk with us, who is the storekeeper, the businessman, woman, politician. In proportion as we see that light, are we enabled to accept that light for ourselves. And so today, it is the Christ that is being glorified, not the messenger or minister of the Christ, nor the disciple of the Christ, but the Christ, the Spirit of God in man. And we will know now that that Spirit of God in man will appear in the low and the high, the up and the down, sometimes the sick and the well, and the rich and the poor. Why? Because all these things are but appearances. Actually, the Christ appears only as the very Son of God itself, regardless of an outer mask or costume or appearance. We are fishers of men, and we have been called, and we have been called to witness the activity of the Christ, not to witness the glory of a man or a woman, to witness the activity and the glory of the Christ, and to acknowledge ourselves as instruments of it within our own being, but to keep our fingers on the lips to the world. And so thank you, and